Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I want to introduce you to a concept that I learned from another coach, and it has been really helpful to me in terms of pushing through the fear of doing new things. And the concept, the idea, is really simple, and it is this: nobody's watching and nobody cares. Nobody's watching and nobody's caring. I learned this from a coach named Emily Williams. She is a pretty big coach out there, and I went to one of her events in January of 2020 out in California. She spoke about this, and I don't know if it's her concept or like her phrase or another coach that she had coach her, so I'm not sure of the origins of this concept, but I love it, and I'm going to talk a bit about it, how it's been helpful to me, how it could be helpful to you, and really the importance of creating for the sake of creating. Around episode 30 of this show, right now I think I'm recording episode 45, something like that, I really wanted to quit. And I knew this is normal. This is part of the arc of not only doing something new, but of doing a podcast, because it takes a long time to get traction. I talked about in one of the early episodes, I feel like first 3 episodes or so, that I'm going to do 100 episodes. I committed to that. And the thing I do know about myself is when I commit to something, I'm really good at executing. So if I said I'm going to do 100, I'm going to do 100. So Sue, if you're listening, I know you're listening, you're editing this. You got a few more episodes ahead to help me with. But around the episode 30 mark, I think I was really burnt out. I've talked about that in some episodes. I'm going through a lot of physical pain with some stuff I'm working through. And the thing about podcasting, and this is not going to be an episode about podcasting, that's kind of interesting that I don't know if a lot of people know, is that obviously you can measure downloads. So you can see how many people download your episodes each week, but it does not take into account anyone who's streaming. And to be honest, I think most people stream their episodes. They're only downloading if they've subscribed. They may just check into 1 or 2 episodes randomly. I don't subscribe to every single podcast, but please, as a sidebar, if you do love a podcast, subscribe to it, because it really helps with their numbers and the back end stuff, and get some more of those downloads. And it's really helpful. But, I don't subscribe to every single podcast because it takes room on your phone. So there's really not a tangible, clear way to measure the quote unquote success of a podcast. And it takes a lot of time to build up. And, Declan had been like, from the beginning, he's like, listen, it is going to take time. He used the analogy of, he watches a lot of, oh my gosh, those fantasy football YouTube videos. Like he does fantasy football, soccer. And I swear when I go downstairs and he's watching this, I just to me, it looks like the most insane, stupid stuff. It's like, what is this? This is anyway, but there's all these people who have these fantasy football YouTube channels, and they, so many of them quit their job, and this is what they're doing. But across the board, what he has told me is that most of them say it takes at least 100 YouTube videos to get any traction. Now, this is a little bit different. It's a podcast, although you can find this podcast on YouTube. I am putting it on there. It takes time. And it's a long-term commitment. And I'm pretty good at long-term commitment. But there's just, it's a lot of effort that goes into it. And so I kind of wanted to quit, and I just pushed through it. And I'm still here, right? I'm still here. And actually, I really enjoy doing it. And I'll say also something is that I don't find it that hard. I think a lot of people struggle with the content, how to come up with ideas. No, I don't struggle with that. I just, it's just effort. Okay, so back to this idea of nobody's watching, nobody cares. This has been really helpful to me in terms of a lot of my creative endeavors and things I'm pursuing. because it helps me push through the fear of what other people are thinking. And you may not agree with this concept. And I feel like I'm actually going to contradict myself a little bit in this episode because nobody's watching and nobody's cares. And the opposite is also true in a way. But for me, I think I would not have started this podcast. I don't think I would have started a blog years ago. I started my blog in 2016. I don't think I would have done a lot of things if I was completely consumed with what other people were going to think and how they were going to react. And I do think this is key to doing anything new because it is scary to put yourself out there. It is scary to think about their reactions. And when it comes to what other people are thinking about what we're doing, it's very overwhelming. And I talk about this back in episode 15 when I talk about unnecessary struggle. It is usually 1 to 3 people in your life whose opinions you're worried about most when it comes to doing something new. And I just recorded a great interview with Amelia Ellenstein about her travels and her leaving her corporate job. And interestingly, she talks about what was one of the hardest things was having people react around her when she left her corporate life and them not accepting or wanting to accept that she was radically changing her life. So like their opinions had an impact on her, their thoughts, their perspectives. So we don't live in a bubble. Other people's thoughts, opinions, they affect us. They feel like they matter. But ultimately, I do sometimes think that we overinflate what other people are thinking of us. If they're actually thinking of us, are they watching us? I mean, I put myself on social media to a certain extent, but I'm not super active there. And I just have had to take on this concept of nobody's watching, nobody cares, because I think I would have become frozen, paralysis by analysis and not put myself out there. And I'm not joking you. I genuinely forget that people can hear this episode or are actually tuning in. Like when I get a text sometimes from either a friend or especially if it's someone I don't really know, but maybe in my peripheral, social circle, that they listened to an episode and they liked it or they had some feedback. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you heard this. I genuinely I forget that other people can hear it. And I think that's because I've in a healthy way, brainwashed myself to believe that nobody's watching and nobody cares. And so this then begs the question of why do anything? If no one's listening, no one's hearing you, no one's seeing you work, why would you do it? Now, this is something I personally had to really dig deep on because outside validation is, I think, key for everybody, particularly for graphic designers, because so much of what we do is we produce something, we get feedback, it's consumed, it goes out there into the world. It's not, our work is not usually hidden. Not to say everything we do is a Nike logo or something like that, but it's out there. We put ourselves out there all the time. And I think this is one of the superpowers of designers in general. And I've talked about this, is that we just have to push through a lot of fear and really bare our creative soul a lot of the time. So why would you do something if nobody's watching and nobody cares? Then that's where the digging deep part comes. And believing that there is a reason that you want to create what you want to create, and the desire to create it is enough. And that can be hard, especially if you're putting yourself out there and it's something that you're not making money from it. For example, this, podcast in its infancy, or your blog, or you're just trying to sell something and you're not yet making money from it. What's the point of it? Well, one thing that's been helpful to me is to recognize that if I'm creating something and putting it out there, I am in creation mode. Creation mode to me is a very high vibration because that connects to contribution. And contribution has become one of my top core values. Now, I kind of took out leadership. I really encourage you guys to really think about your core values. I'll do a separate episode on that. But there's lots of things online if you just try and get in touch with what's most important to you. Leadership was one of mine. I have 4 core values and I kind of shoved that out. I just took it out because I evolved, changed really. And I'm more interested in contribution. So what can I contribute to the world? Some people will use the word service. That word doesn't really land with me or resonate with me, but contribution feels good. So if I am in creation mode, I am automatically in contribution mode. I am trying to create something and put it out there for people to consume. And this is taking me out of consuming or consumption mode, which a lot of us are in. And every time we're scrolling on Instagram, all the things, we're consuming, consuming, consuming. Personally, I'm trying to make sure that every day I'm more in creation mode than in consuming mode. That's just, for me, it's a really easy kind of barometer to check in. And I also don't want to just be in execution mode. So sometimes we're just doing tasks that have to be done. We're just loading the dishwasher, taking it out. Let's say you have a job on an assembly line, which is a very valuable job, but it's more of an execution role, right? So that is one chunk. That's a certain vibration, a certain energy. And again, nothing wrong with having that kind of role or being in execution mode. However, let's say you were working in a factory line job, then you're coming home, you're throwing in a microwave dinner, and then you're just sitting out in front of Netflix and vegging, and you're just consuming all day. You're in either consumption mode or execution mode. There's no creation. But if you had that same job, came home and made an amazing meal, took your dog for a really thoughtful walk without your phone, and I'm just going to sidebar here. You guys know I love a sidebar, but when you walk your dog, I lose my mind when I see people walking their dog and they're on their phone having conversation. I firmly believe you need to be present with your dog, especially if you've been gone all day. And the focus is on that experience. You owe your dog that. That is just like a respect thing. And it just really, I just lose my mind. And the dog wants your attention. So be there for your dog. So being on a purposeful, intentional walk with your dog, to me, is creation mode. Because you're giving your attention, you're giving the love. So there's certain ways that we can, I think, change our vibration and really make a better world, is being more in creation mode. So if you are creating something and you feel like nobody's really seeing it and nobody's hearing you and nobody cares, I get it. It can be really hard. As I said, I was really going to quit this podcast. Well, I wasn't really going to quit, but I was in, let's face it, I was in victim mode and feeling sorry for myself and just kind of whining and complaining a bit. Had a bit of a pity party, which I'm a big fan of. Just have a temporary one. Usually 24 hours is my cutoff point. You are contributing to the world if you are creating. And the other piece of this is that I'm feeling personally, and I'm seeing it, that people I think are not as motivated to be in creation mode because so much is being created, well, artificially. There's the whole AI thing happening that's just been hitting us hard and heavy the last year, especially. And oh my gosh, I was hosting, it was last year, a group coaching event for some people. And there was one woman spoke up and she said, she was also a designer. And she's like, I'm sorry, but just fuck AI. I was just like, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, because it's just, there's so much going on that I think is demotivating us from being in creation mode, because what's the point? So I think, again, we have to dig deep and actually really personally try and stay in creation mode. And again, that can be as simple as baking some muffins or whatever you need to do. And not everything's going to land that you do. And I know that's really hard too. And I'm going to share one of my nice little failures for you, because I love a good failure story. But first of all, we need to support people who are creating. So that's huge. Appreciate their work, buy their ebook. If your friend has written an ebook or selling a little course, whatever you can do to support other people that are in creation mode, please do that. It means the world. Again, subscribe to their podcast, write a review. If you buy some clothing online, I try and support Canadian designers. That's a thing that I'm pretty conscious of. Not to say that I don't do a good Costco run every once in a while, but I'm trying to support the people who are creating. And then I'm trying to be in a place of creating. And it is easy to feel like it doesn't matter. So the paradox piece, or where I'm going to contradict myself, is that kind of nobody's watching and nobody cares, but they also kind of are, right? So one thing that was interesting is when I launched my podcast, and I'm just using this podcast example because it's easy to get your head around, and it's recent for me, sent it to a bunch of friends, just like, hey, podcast launch, would love you to tune in. A lot of my closest friends, well, a handful, I would say, no comment, no thumbs up to the text, no acknowledgement that I've done this, nothing. Like radio silence. So that definitely checked the nobody's watching, nobody cares box. So I had to wrestle with that a little bit. I try not to have expectations of people, but I haven't figured out the whole expectations of people. There's all these things that say, have high expectations for yourself and none of others. I just don't know how you're supposed to go through life without having any expectations. So I got to get some expert on expectations. We need to talk about great expectations on this show somehow. But a lot of people, or a handful of people, sorry, I won't be that dramatic, didn't react, didn't comment, not that I know of or listening. However, I got a text from a friend of a friend that I sent my show to that never acknowledged it or mentioned it. And they said, oh, I found out about this episode through the mutual friends and commented on this episode. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting because I never shared with this other person who texted me that I have a podcast. I probably should do a little bit more self-promotion. That's one thing I have to get better at with this. Like I just told my brother-in-law I have a podcast and it's been like 9 months. So I thought that's interesting. So people are kind of watching and I guess they're noticing. But like that's one thing that's weird that will happen is like people that you think are not paying any attention will suddenly be like, oh, I did see your blog post or I saw that post you did on LinkedIn. Wow, that's so cool. And that throws me when that happens. Again, like I'm expecting nobody's watching. And again, this is what's easiest for me and has been helpful to me to stay the course. And I talk about within a lot of my like presentations that I do or keynotes is having blinders on and kind of really shutting out the world. Now, this works for me because I can easily get overwhelmed. I can get consumed with what I think other people are thinking because we are humans. We all do that. I think I'm better than maybe some people. I don't compare myself as much, definitely as much as I did when in my 20s and earlier in my life. But it can happen. And so I do like the concept of putting on blinders and really filtering out whatever's going on and just coming back to what makes me feel good and what feels good for me. This is the only way that I can stay in the role of creation mode and doing things that I genuinely feel like I want to do and not questioning why I want to do them. You know, if I spent days and days or weeks and years thinking about why I want to do a podcast, I don't think I would have ever done it. You just got to kind of jump in. The idea comes. The concept for the title of the show came to me one day driving, like just instantaneously driving. I was on the 400 driving up north to like the Collingwood area. And I had set the intention that I needed a name for the show and the kind of the concept behind it. The working title for this podcast, which was never going to be used, but it was just in my head, was A Disorderly Life because my life has been disorderly, which has been hard for me because as graphic designers, we love order, we love lines, we love grids, we all love all that stuff. So I've had this kind of disorderly life, disorderly career. My career has definitely been disorderly. But I knew that wasn't right. It wasn't the right vibe at all. But that was the working title. And I had like just set the intention that the right title would come to me. I think within 2 days, again, I was driving on the 400 and the name Ditch the Struggle literally just dropped into my head. And it was so obvious because I've used that term a billion times in all of my marketing materials. And it was in my kind of sign off on a whole bunch of my, like any of my ebooks. It talks about like, I'm here to help people change their life from, I think it's vanilla success to spectacular triumph and ditch the struggle, all this stuff. So it was right there in front of me, but never thought about it. Anyway, it drops into me, got the show. The point is that if I had overthought things, spent all of my time thinking about what others would think, I wouldn't do it. And I'm fully prepared for any kind of negative backlash. In fact, I kind of want to get some negative feedback because I want to talk about some things that I think are a little bit polarizing, or I have some pretty strong opinions on things that I haven't really gotten to yet, but that's the plan. And I think you do need to be a bit of a disruptor when you're doing anything. So that's kind of the vision that we'll talk about some interesting things, especially around that toxic societal programming. Because I think we do so many things based on programs that we've adopted and adapted to. And so let me just tell you about a little failure that I did have that is helpful because I guess nobody was watching and nobody did care, and this is why I did fail. But the point is, like, the good side of this is that no one is being like, "Oh, wow, that really flopped for you." And it's just a very small example, but um, I have always been good at negotiating with Rogers. So if you're not in Canada, Rogers is our like cell phone provider. It's like your Verizon or things like that. We basically have two providers in Canada. It's Bell or Rogers. And it's like, which evil side do you want to pick? Like, they're both awful. I'm with Rogers, have been forever. And every basically 6 months, I call them up and I renegotiate like plans and like, because they're notorious, and I guess this is how they all work, for like tacking on extra fees to your bill, and suddenly your bill goes like $50 more and you're like, what the F is happening? And I keep an eye on things like that. So I used to call them up all the time, and then my friends were like, oh my God, you need to call Rogers on my behalf, and like, how did you do it, and blah blah blah. So I thought, you know what, people keep asking me for my help on this subject matter. I'm really good at it, and I'm going to write a little ebook on it, because they always say, write what you know. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to write an ebook about this. So I write this ebook about how to negotiate, or it was just called How to Save Money on Your Rogers Bill, how to negotiate all the things. And it had specific verbiage. Like, if you you call them, and here's like, first of all, you have to get yourself in the right headspace to call them. And then here's like language that you can use. I'm really good at verbiage, like what to actually say, what words to use. It's been really effective for me. So I've been doing this forever. So I write this ebook, I get it professionally edited. I have an editor that I work with for all my ebooks that I put out there, spend the money on that, put it out there. I even made a YouTube video to promote it. And I just thought it was selling for $7. Like, it was $7 Canadian, which is like what, 5 cents American, something like that. Put it out there. So many of my friends were like, I can't wait to have this. I just want it so badly. I never sold one copy of this ebook for $7. So it did not land, and nobody really wanted it. So nobody was watching and nobody cares. Or maybe they were watching and they didn't care. It just, maybe it wasn't aligned with my brand, but I'm all about trying to, obviously ditch the struggle, make things easier. I thought it was fun. I thought it was like just a really helpful thing. There was some stuff online you could get for free, but it wasn't as thorough as I had done it. Mine was like very step by step. It did not land. It did not fly. It is gone from my website. So it didn't work at all. But here's the thing. No one knew it didn't work. Like, no one has access to how many copies I'm selling or not selling, right? I still feel like it was a good exercise to do. Every failure is feedback, and that's just the way it went. So I just decided, okay, this isn't working. Now, I will say, if you're listening to this podcast and you would like a copy of this book, I will email it to you for free. I just don't have it online anymore. And if for some reason you're like, I need this ebook, I will send you it. Just go to my website, alanarosa.com/contact, just send me a note. I do get all those notes. I just ask for the ebook. I'm going to send it to you for free. And yeah, some things aren't going to work. Some things aren't going to fly, and you'll put a lot of time and effort into it. I actually put a ton of time and effort into that one, and it just didn't work. And that is fine. I moved on. It's good. And the point is, it's also not going to stop me from creating more things. And I really just want you to think about that idea of being in creation mode versus consumption mode or execution mode, and the difference. And you can actually go through your day and even do an audit. Like, when am I creating? When am I consuming? And when am I executing? So again, executing is just like doing a task, like just doing what you have to do to get stuff done. And how can you be more in the contribution mode, creation mode, things like that? Because I do think that leads to fulfillment. And I don't think we're being conscious about this, because, we're being funneled into society that are just consumers. And the people that are creating, I think they find it hard to get themselves out there and for it to be worth it. And I'm trying to get at a point in my life personally where the being in the creation mode is enough. That if nothing happens from it, nothing comes of it, if no one's buying it, even if very few people are listening to what I'm putting out there, it's still worth it, because I feel better about myself at the end of the day. My confidence is higher. I feel like I am doing something of purpose and of value. And I read somewhere, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the source, but 70% of Americans feel they have a bullshit job. 70. So 70% of Americans feel they have a bullshit job. You think those people are going to feel fulfilled? that they're of value, that they're contributing, that their life has meaning, that they have purpose? No. So they're probably doing jobs that, like they don't feel like have any meaning in terms of like no one's seeing the final result, or it's just like the tiniest cog in such a stupid big wheel. It doesn't matter, right? So much to say about that in terms of finding purpose with our work. But for now, checking in just to see if you're in creation mode more of the time, I think is key to the fulfillment piece, the confidence piece, and feeling good about yourself when you close your eyes at night. Because I definitely feel good personally about knowing that I'm trying to put stuff out there, that I'm trying to give information that helps people or inspires people, maybe just entertains them on their drive, things like that. And I know every one of you has creation within you that wants to get out. You got to put it out there. So find people that can support you. That has been huge for me, as I have a whole, I feel like I have a team, like an A team around me of people that want my stuff out there and are helping me do it. And I've found incredible people. So find your people. That is going to be huge. Stay in creation mode. Keep making things, even if you're not a quote unquote creative person. That's doesn't matter. Does not matter. Okay. Just keep doing things, keep creating. And again, if you want my ebook, please email me and I'm happy to send it to you, because what's the point of having it just sitting on my hard drive of my computer, right? I'm going to share it. Let's keep sharing all of our creations, guys. Take care. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.